afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is consideration of business motion number 4008 in the name of Bruce Crawford on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out a revision to the business programme for tomorrow, Thursday, the 6th of September. I would ask any member who wishes to speak against the motion to press the request to speak button now. I call on Bruce Crawford to move motion number 4008.
In doing so, Deputy Presiding Officer, can I say that the purpose of this change is to allow a debate for the appointment of Scottish ministers?
Thank you. No member has asked to speak against the motion. Therefore, I will now put the question to the Chamber. The question is that motion number 4008 in the name of Bruce Crawford be agreed to. Are we all agreed? That is agreed. The next item of business is consideration. The first item of business this afternoon thereafter is consideration of business motion number 3992 in the name of Bruce Crawford on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out a revision to the business programme for today. I would ask any member who wishes to speak against the motion to press the request to speak button now. I call on Bruce Crawford to move motion number 3992.
Doing so, you'll recall that yesterday afternoon I said that we'd be bringing into the Chamber a ministerial statement on ferry services to Orkney. That's the purpose of this particular change. Thank you.
Many thanks. No member has asked to speak against the motion. Therefore, I will now put the question to the Chamber. And the question is that motion number 3992 in the name of Bruce Crawford be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. The motion is therefore agreed. So, the next item of business for this afternoon is portfolio questions. And we move now to question 1 in the name of Jamie Hepburn.
To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions it had with North Lanarkshire Council regarding the condition and upkeep of schools.
Minister Alistair Allen.
Ministers and government officials meet local authorities on a regular basis to discuss a range of issues related to the school estate.
Jamie Hepburn.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Minister may be aware there is an outstanding bid by North Lanarkshire Council before the Scottish Futures Trust for the next available tranche of funding for a new campus for the excellent Greenfalls High School, which is the largest secondary school in the North Lanarkshire Council area. A bid I wholeheartedly support. Can the Minister tell me what information there is on when it's likely the Scottish Futures Trust will make a decision on this matter?
Minister.
I can confirm that I expect to be able to make an announcement by the end of this month, although the member will of course appreciate that I'm unable to speak about specific projects or applications at this stage.
Thank you. Question 2, Liam Macarthur.
To ask the Scottish Government what action it's taken to progress its plans for a management fee for non-UK EU students.
Thank you. Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I've raised the matter of a management fee with the European Commissioner, most recently at the Bologna Conference of Higher Education Ministers, where I also discussed the issue with the appropriate Austrian Minister, who has similar issues. We are continuing to consider how the management fee might work in Scotland in the context of European law.
Thank you. Liam Macarthur.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response? Since the last election, he has repeatedly informed Parliament that discussions with the Commissions and others on introducing a charge for EU students studying in Scotland are progressing at 15 months on. We do seem no nearer a resolution. Given the First Minister's announcement yesterday on his legislative programme, can the Education Secretary confirm whether he has asked for any assessment to be carried out of the cost to a future Scottish Government of having to pay fees for rest of UK students studying in an independent Scotland? And if so, will he publish those figures?
Cabinet Secretary.
I have to say that there is a very simple solution to this, and I would welcome the opportunity for the rest of the UK students to be treated as EU students, and the simple answer is independence. With independence, we can resolve this issue once and for all, and I look forward to so doing.
Thank you. Question 3, Mark Obiagi.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the NUS Scotland report, Unlocking Scotland's Potential.
Cabinet Secretary.
Widening access is a priority for this government, Presiding Officer. We're determined to encourage aspiration and promote ambition so that students from all sections of society can reap the benefit of higher education. The NUS have been extremely helpful in assisting us to develop our policy. I expect that to continue as we introduce statutory widening access agreements as part of the Post-16 Bill. I regard Unlocking Scotland's Potential as yet another helpful and supportive contribution to the debate.
One of the aspects of the report was that it focused exclusively on the SIMD 20 area measure, widening access, and it might surprise members to learn that this leaves out, in Edinburgh alone, Gorgie, Drylaw, Leith, Oxgangs and Sighthill. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that in the forthcoming legislation, given the importance of these agreements, in order to capture an accurate picture of whether universities are successfully opening their doors, that a wide range of metrics should be used?
Cabinet Secretary.
No difficulty with that, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government does recognise we've got a diverse university sector and a diverse education sector, and the contribution to widening access will vary across the sector. Equality of access, though, is fundamental, so we have to start with that issue. We have to start with the importance of student retention. We have to learn from projects such as the Glasgow University project, which shows that those who are admitted through special schemes can actually do better at university than others. But widening access is not a quick fix. It's important that the agreements that we are putting in place also support activity with schools to build aspiration, to build achievement and to build long-term success.
Supplementary, Neil Bibby.
To ask the Cabinet Secretary how he will monitor performance in terms of widening access, and to ask him what targets will be set in relation to widening access.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as Mr Bibby will be aware, the process of finalising the outcome agreements with Scotland's universities continues. Within those agreements, there will be quite clear commitments, but it's not a one-size-fits-all commitment. Each university will approach this differently. They will have to be encouraged to move in the right direction, and some have moved already much further than others. Rather than set an overall global target within Scotland, what we need to do is to make sure the performance of every university is improved, and those universities that are the poorest performers are actually have the biggest improvement. That's what we're seeking to do through the outcome agreements.
Supplementary, Liz Smith.
Cabinet Secretary, at the time of the publication of the document from NUS, there was a suggestion that perhaps one of the things that the Scottish Government might look at is the possibility of accepting students from disadvantaged backgrounds on slightly lower qualifications. Could you give a response to that?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think that you just have to look at the Glasgow University scheme, which I visited some weeks ago, to see that whilst nobody wants to say that the bar should be set less high because academic achievement is very important, some flexibility within the system is important. And indeed, the Glasgow University scheme allows students to drop a grade in one or two subjects if, in actual fact, their performance in the scheme has been such as the university believes that they can make success of going there. So it's about judging young people in the round and in the richer basis of attainment rather than a single set of examination results. Now, I think all of us across this chamber would probably agree with that. It is about the achievement of the young person and what they can go on to achieve rather than a single set of results. But nobody is talking about reducing the bar, and certainly nobody is talking about reducing the quality of those who go in.
Thank you. Question 4, Lewis MacDonald.
Ask the Scottish Government whether changes will be made to the arrangements for funding further education.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, in line with the shift to regionalisation, our plan is for college funding to be based on the needs of a region in future. Our policy paper, Putting Learners at the Centre, set out the principles of a simpler, needs-based system, and we shall consult on those proposals soon.
Lewis MacDonald.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Is he aware of this morning's Northern Lights report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, which concludes that the supply of appropriately skilled labour continues to be the greatest threat to Aberdeen's ability to become a global energy centre of excellence? Will he assure us today that in assessing needs on a regional basis, he will take into account the needs for skilled labour of industries which can lead Scotland's economic growth, such as energy and marine and engineering, and that they will be absolutely central to the future funding of further education.
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I welcome Mr MacDonald's as a trailblazer in his benches, because he has got exactly the point about college regionalisation and college change that I've been trying to make to his colleagues for some time. He sees it absolutely precisely, that focusing the outcomes of further education on the employment needs of the region is what we have to do. I saw the report. It is a justification for the process that we're going through, and I very much welcome his support for it. I hope that will spread quickly amongst his less enlightened colleagues.
Thank you. Supplementary, Duncan McNeill.
Has the Cabinet Secretary given any further consideration to those who are most vulnerable and who need the support of our further education colleges, who do not naturally go into employment, those with special needs?
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely, and I made clear, and have made clear throughout the whole process of regionalisation, that the needs of all the learners need to be taken into account. But it is very often the needs those who are furthest from the labour market that we need to consider most intensely. So I think that you are moving close to Mr MacDonald, and I really welcome that. I think that others should follow that route.
Thank you. Question 6, Jackie Bailey. Question 5, Jackie Bailey.
To ask the Scottish Government what funding it has allocated to West Dunbartonshire Council from its Youth Unemployment Fund.
Minister Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, West Dunbartonshire Council receives £96,000, £592,000 specifically to support delivery of opportunities for all, including 16+ learning choices and activity agreements. This funding enables West Dunbartonshire Council to ensure robust transition planning for all young people from S4 onwards, enabling them to access positive destinations. But West Dunbartonshire is also benefiting from ESF funding of over £1.2 million until September 2013 and in excess of £166,000 ERDF funding until July 2014.
Thank you. Jackie Bailey.
The Minister would recognise the scale of the challenge facing West Dunbartonshire, and I am disappointed to note that actually there was nothing allocated from the Youth Unemployment Fund for the local authority. Now, the Minister knows my view that had funding been based on the number of unemployed as a percentage of the population, then West Dunbartonshire would have received some support due to the huge increased levels of unemployment. So will the Minister give further consideration to what assistance her government can give to help young unemployed people in West Dunbartonshire get into work when she meets the Council in the near future?
Minister.
I thank Jackie Bailey for her supplementary, Presiding Officer. She does, of course, only refer to one rather specific strand of funding, an important strand of funding, though that is. But it's very important with my national responsibilities that I maximise the use of every pound and try and reach as many young people as possible. She is, of course, referring to £9 million, which was given to 6 local authorities, where the challenges are most acute. That's not to say the situation isn't extremely challenging in West Dunbartonshire. And that methodology was based both on high numbers of young people and also high percentage. But to reassure Ms Bailey, I'm very much looking forward to the meeting with Councillor Rooney. There will indeed be opportunities for all local authorities in terms of future ESF funding. And of course there's the Third Sector Challenge Fund, which will be announced soon. And I'm sure Ms Bailey will be very interested in the results of that.
Thank you. Question 6, Chick Brodie.
To ask the Scottish Government how much will be spent on IT systems by the college sector in 2012-2013.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, colleges are responsible for taking their own spending decisions for which they are held to account. It is therefore not possible to predict how much colleges will spend on ICT systems in 2012-13. However, there is a very strong commitment within the sector to secure efficiencies in the use of ICT and improve existing processes. For example, colleges contributed actively to the McClelland review of ICT infrastructure in the public sector, which reported in June 2011 and are now taking forward its recommendations. Current and future college mergers also create the opportunity to develop common systems and deliver important financial savings.
Thank you. Chick Brodie.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. In the last few months, we've had reports of IT systems in other government departments which were signed off before 2007 and which are now not deemed fit for purpose. I ask the Cabinet Secretary if he can advise what the current contracted expenditure is on IT systems in the college sector, what the actual expenditure is to date on the systems since contract, How many of the systems were replicated across the sector? And will he ask Audit Scotland to instigate a full review of existing systems regarding the fitness for purpose and the plans for future development of such systems in the new college infrastructures?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think in terms of the detailed nature of those questions about the knowledge of exactly how many systems they are and how much they cost, I think it would be best if that question was addressed to the colleges themselves. As I said in my question, as in my answer, colleges are responsible for taking their own spending decisions. But I would like to be helpful to Mr Brodie, so I will ask the Chief Executive of the Scottish Funding Council to write to him about these issues and to see if we can provide more information.
Excellent. Question 7, Dennis Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government if it believes whether or not the local authorities will continue to adhere to the spirit of the moratorium on rural school closures.
Cabinet Secretary.
Given the current uncertainty, Presiding Officer, regarding the outstanding judicial appeal of the case between Scottish ministers and Colin Neil Shear and the resulting delay of the Commission on Delivery of Rural Education's report, the Scottish Government fully supports COSLA, who have asked councils to use their best judgment and to avoid consulting on closures while the Commission finalises its report for publication.
Dennis Robertson.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. In my own constituency of Aberdeenshire West, there was a school due for closure prior to the moratorium. Since that time, Cabinet Secretary, the school roll has increased significantly and they have a new head teacher. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that closure should be a last resort and that Logie Coldstone Primary School in my own constituency is a perfect example of this?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I'd warmly agree with that. I think we've seen case after case where, with the right approach, with the right policies, then the size of rural primaries under threat can be increased. And the whole purpose of setting up the Commission on Rural Education was to, or one of the many purposes, was to share good practice and to find out how that could be done. Closure of a rural school should always be regarded as a last resort. In coming to that decision, a local authority must be able to demonstrate that it has considered all viable alternatives first. That's a key part of the policy which underpins the School Consultation Act 2010, and I think will remain very much in my mind as to how we should move forward. Of course, in the case of Logie Coldstone, Mr Robertson will be aware that last year ministers refused to grant consent for Aberdeenshire Council to close the school. As such, the school remains open, and I understand the roll is increasing.
Thank you. Question 8, Margaret Burgess.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what recent progress has been made regarding college mergers.
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I simply say how delighted I am that Margaret Burgess will be joining the ministerial team. It's always great to see a former election agent do well. Election agent of mine, I should say. So she went on to much greater heights. Can I tell the member I'm delighted to say that I laid 2 separate orders before the Parliament last week, which will have the effect of merging 2 groups of colleges. Firstly, the Scottish Agricultural College will join with our 3 land-based colleges of further education to form a single institution on the 1st of October. On the same date, Stevenson, Telford and Julian-S colleges will combine to form the new Edinburgh College. Both these ventures are the product of considerable vision and commitment by the partners involved. Subject to the approval of Parliament, we will see in each case the creation of a new institution of scale and distinction on Scotland's educational landscape. The majority of colleges are looking at merger, creating the scope as early as next August for single colleges in Ayrshire, the Lower Clyde, Fife and in the north and south of Glasgow. These are being driven by the belief that learners derive the maximum benefit from provision, which closely matches the needs of the economy, as Mr MacDonald has very rightly pointed out this afternoon, and which eliminates waste and needless duplication.
Thank you. Margaret Burgess.
Okay. I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. But as the Cabinet Secretary will be aware, the new Ayrshire College will be a merger of Ayr College, Kilmarnock College and the co-winning campus of James Watt College, which is in my constituency and the largest of the Ayrshire campuses. And there is a genuine willingness from all parties to make this merger work for the benefit of learners in Ayrshire. However, there are still concerns in the co-winning campus, which is effectively part of a college that doesn't have parity with the other 2 colleges. What reassurances can the Cabinet Secretary give to the staff and students of the co-winning campus that this is a true merger and not a takeover? And will he come to co-winning campus with me to hear these concerns?
I will be delighted to come to co-winning with you. It will not be the first time I've been to the co-winning campus of James Watt College, but I can assure you that all mergers should be entered into on the basis of equality and parity of treatment. Co-winning it will be one of 3 partners in making up the Ayrshire College, and I am absolutely certain it will bring to the Ayrshire College very considerable advantages and distinctions in learning and teaching. So I do hope that the three partners will go forward on that basis. I'll be very happy to encourage them to do so.
Thank you. Liam Macarthur.
Thank you. As with Kilwinning, the Cabinet Secretary will be aware from his recent visits to both Shetland and Orkney that concerns do still exist regarding the implications of the college regionalisation agenda in the Highlands and Islands. In that context, can you confirm what the remit is of the group chaired by Michael Foxley and when he expects to receive the group's recommendations?
Cabinet Secretary.
I will be meeting Michael Foxley again tomorrow. The remit is to take the outline agreement that I secured from the colleges and the University of the Highlands Islands about their restructuring into the new era in which they both have title and they are forming a further education as well as higher education institution, to take that into a final organisational structure, and that's what they're working on. I took the advantage when I was in Shetland and Orkney last week of meeting with both colleges. They're the only two unincorporated colleges in Scotland, and we had very, very productive discussions. I think they have an enormous amount to contribute to the regionalisation of higher education in the Highlands and Islands, whilst maintaining a very strong local focus, the focus on local employability, exactly as I'm going to repeat him all day, Mr MacDonald has indicated today. And in those circumstances, I look forward to them doing so, and I work closely with them and with the members for those constituencies.
Thank you. Neil Findlay.
In the same vein as what Margaret Burgess said, over the summer I've been contacted again by concerned staff and students at the land-based colleges in the east of Scotland who feel that the merger there is more akin to a takeover by the Scottish Agricultural College. Are their concerns justified?
Cabinet Secretary.
I have met, as Mr Findlay knows, because he was there with some of the staff and students. I think that at that stage there were considerable changes still to be made to the final arrangements. I do not regard those as takeovers. It is a true and honest merger, and I will do everything I can to make sure that the parts of that come together and have come together in a constructive and equal way. It's very important in these circumstances to encourage change and also to be quite straightforward about it. So it's important we tell those who are involved the truth about these matters and make sure that they are encouraged to put their all into making sure it happens. I'm happy to do so, and if Mr Findlay invites me to take part in further discussions to help that, I'll always be happy to do that.
Thank you. Question 9, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what progress is being made on the programme of school building and refurbishment using the Scottish Futures Trust.
Minister Alistair Allen.
I expect to be able to announce which schools have been successful in securing funding in the third and final phase of the Scotland Schools for the Future programme by the end of September 2012.
Bill Kidd.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for his reply. Can I ask if he shares my concerns that Glasgow City Council failed to make any significant bids for additional school rebuilding or refurbishment projects, despite being invited to do so in February? And does he agree that this is a lost opportunity for children in my constituency of Glasgow Anniesland attending schools in great need of such work, such as Broomhill and Blairdardy primaries?
Minister.
While the member will be aware that these are matters for Glasgow Council, I would certainly commend him for his diligence in pursuing the Council on these issues.
Thank you. Hugh Henry.
The Minister will be aware that East Renfrewshire Council was unsuccessful in a previous bid for funding for a new Barrhead High School. It's now made another application. Can I ask the Minister if he will look favourably on East Renfrewshire Council's bid for a new Barrhead High?
Minister.
Well, as I've said previously, the member will appreciate I can't here discuss individual applications from individual local authorities, but I can say that every application is looked at extremely carefully on their merits.
Thank you. Willie Coffey.
Thank you. The Minister will also be aware of the dreadful condition of many schools in Scotland that were left behind by Labour in their pursuit of PFI schemes for the few. Having visited some of these schools in my constituency last Friday and seen some of the conditions that our children and teaching staff are enduring, can you ensure me that this programme will reach as many schools as possible so that learning and teaching can take place in an environment fit for the 21st century?
Minister.
Well, the member will be aware that the Government has a manifesto commitment to half the number of pupils in crumbling schools, and that's something that we're well on the way to achieving. The figure was 2000. The figure in 2007 was that we had some 60% of pupils were in good quality school buildings. That figure had risen in 2010 to 82%, and we continue to improve the situation and are confident of meeting our manifesto commitments in that respect nationally.
Thank you. Question 10, Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what proportion of pupils left education in 2012 with standard grades at level 7 only.
Minister Alistair Allen.
The Scottish Government does not routinely produce this information on standard grade 7 only. However, the recent SQA results pre-appeals show an increase in the pass rates at grades 1 to 6, and there is also an increase in those achieving at grades 1 to 3. Following the valuable work of the head teacher-led attainment group, the Scottish Government is working with partners to raise the attainment of all learners and to address the long-standing link between deprivation and attainment.
Gordon MacDonald.
Thank the Minister for that answer. The Wester Hailes Education Centre in my constituency has made great strides over recent years to raise student attainment. This year, 21% of pupils achieved 5 or more standard grades at credit level, a dramatic increase on previous years. Will the Minister join me in congratulating the staff and pupils who made this achievement possible and examine the measures introduced in the school to identify if they can be rolled out in other areas?
Minister.
I am very happy indeed to congratulate the staff and pupils on their very considerable achievement which has been brought to my notice by the member and by others, and I would be very happy to visit the school as part of my ongoing programme of school visits. I understand that Education Scotland will also be conducting a follow-up inspection next month, and I look forward to reading the results of those findings.
Thank you. Question 11, Hugh Henry.
To ask the Scottish Government how much it will cost to meet the university fees of non-UK EU students in 2012-13.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, this information is not currently available. While students are encouraged to apply for support from April this year, the official closing date for application for session 12-13 is not actually until 31st March 2013.
Thank you. Hugh Henry, microphone, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Presiding Officer. I note what the Cabinet Secretary said in reply to Liam Macarthur earlier on about resolving this issue. He has been saying now for nearly 2 years that the problem would be fixed. Can he tell Parliament when it will be fixed?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think the description of this, Presiding Officer, as a problem is misguided. There are regulations that exist. It would be helpful if we were able to charge a fee to EU students. I would like to be able to do so, but there are many, many obstacles, and we are trying to negotiate our way through them. But I repeat what I said before. I would very happily try and move forward on this issue on the basis of independence, because that would be the right basis on which we run Scotland's education system. We're very lucky in Scotland to have such a strong education system, and particularly such a strong university system. It is based very strongly on the right of access to education. It is based on the tradition of free access to education, and I hope Hugh Henry and his colleagues will remain honest to that. If they do that, then I think that the opportunities remain great for Scottish education.
Thank you. Question 12, Stuart Maxwell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how many Scotland domiciled students have been accepted by Scotland's universities for 2012-2013.
Cabinet Secretary.
Applications are still being processed, Presiding Officer. However, UCAS statistics show that by 22nd of August, the number of Scottish domiciles accepted to study higher education in Scotland in 2012-13 stood at 25,945.
Stuart Maxwell.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? Despite recent scare stories, the fact that a record number of Scottish students will start university this year is clear evidence of the importance of free education in this country. But given the ongoing budgetary pressures brought on by UK cuts, what assurances can the Cabinet Secretary give that the Scottish Government will continue to protect university places for future Scottish school leavers?
Cabinet Secretary.
Our record investment in the higher education sector, Presiding Officer, over the period of this spending review, and the steps we took to ensure that funding was focused on Scottish students, will ensure that we continue to protect places at Scottish universities for Scottish students. By also taking steps to support widening access, we will support school leavers from all parts of Scotland to access higher education opportunities. We should always remember there are a record number of Scottish young people studying in Scottish universities. Opportunities have never been greater. We should celebrate that across this chamber.
Thank you. Question 13, Paul Wheelhouse. Microphone.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what funding has been given to assist areas identified by the Scottish Funding Council as having low participation rates in further education.
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I also welcome Mr Wheelhouse to the ministerial team in a job that I was very fond of performing myself. I'm sure he will greatly enjoy it. Presiding Officer, the Scottish Funding Council has identified Ayrshire, Borders, Central, Dumfries and Galloway, Highlands and Islands and Lanarkshire as the college regions with a significant gap between need and current provision. To bridge that gap, the Council has allocated £8 million in academic year 2012-13 to fund additional student places in those regions. We will shortly consult on proposals to move to a simpler, needs-based system across Scotland.
Paul Wheelhouse.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer and for his words, kind words. Thank you. As the Cabinet Secretary is aware and has identified, there are several areas in the south of Scotland that do have low participation. In particular, two areas that were identified in the Scottish Funding Council's Scottish Participation in Further and Higher Education report 2005-06 to 2009-10 were Dunbar and East Lothian and Eyemouth in Scottish Borders, which both appear to have participation less than half the average. Will the Minister perhaps agree to meet with me to discuss any potential options there might be to grow participation in those areas?
I'd be very happy to meet with the member, and I do commend the actions, for example, of Dumfries and Galloway Council, who last week, in their new administration, decided to increase the funding for the Crichton campus, which will allow the ambitious developments that may take place in the Crichton to grow there, which will encourage further access. I think that's a very positive step forward.
Thank you. Question 14, Jim Eadie.
To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions it has had with Napier University regarding the future of the Craighouse campus.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I am not aware of any discussions. Universities are independent, autonomous institutions, and as such, the Scottish Government does not intervene in institutional matters, such as decisions regarding their estate strategies.
Jim Eadie.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, but is he aware of the significant local concern at the sale of the Craighouse campus by Napier University, which is seen as a hugely valuable community asset? And notwithstanding Napier's independence, does he agree with me that the university has an obligation to achieve best value for the taxpayer, to ensure that all transactions are open and transparent, but also to ensure that any assets are disposed of in a way which continues to provide benefit to the local community?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, Presiding Officer, I am very keen that that indissoluble link between universities and the communities they serve is recognised. The Scottish Funding Council actually requires colleges and universities to seek the Council's prior approval for the disposal of publicly funded property when the proceeds are likely to exceed £3 million. As part of the approval process, the Council requires colleges and universities to demonstrate that they have obtained an appropriate professional valuation from a reputable property agent. I will ask the Chief Executive of the Scottish Funding Council to write to the member to reassure him on this matter. I am happy to meet him too.
Thank you. Question 15, Drew Smith. And can we make sure all electronic devices are switched off, please?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to ensure that postgraduate students are able to access the funding necessary for their studies?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government is committed to supporting all students to realise their ambitions. Many postgraduates will have already received direct support as undergraduates. Now, under the Postgraduate Student Allowances Scheme, postgraduates may also be eligible for a loan of up to £3,400 to help pay some or all of their tuition fees. Further information is available from the Student Awards Agency for Scotland.
Drew Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response. I have been contacted by a constituent who wants to study for an MSc in Educational Psychology. And while SAS will provide a small loan, that amount fails to cover both her course fees, never mind, in fact, the other living costs that she would accrue. While if my constituent had lived in England, she would have had her fees paid and been given bursary payments. Will the Minister confirm whether the training and recruitment of educational psychologists is a priority for the Scottish Government?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, there were previous arrangements in place for the training of educational psychologists, but we have tried to standardise the arrangements for postgraduate support because we can actually support more postgraduates to achieve more. I have to point out that this government is the first Scottish government that has actually moved to support postgraduates. It is one of my ambitions to expand the support for postgraduate education. Prior to this academic year, the Postgraduate Students Allowances Scheme provided some money. Now we have a much better scheme which has expanded very substantially. So rather than looking at the glass and seeing something that's half empty, I hope that the member might look at this and say that is certainly filling up. And in so doing, it allows us to support Scottish students in their ambition to contribute everything they can.
Thank you. Question 16, Claudia Beamish.
Presiding Officer, To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to ensure young carers are identified by schools at an early stage so they can be given appropriate support.
Minister Aileen Campbell.
We recognise the dedication of young carers and the support that they need. This has resulted in greater impetus at local level to ensure identification and support in schools. We fund the Scottish Young Carers Services Alliance to produce resources to equip primary school teachers with the necessary skills and knowledge to identify and support young carers. Similarly, resources for secondary schools, also funded by the Scottish Government, will be taken forward. We will shortly be publishing a long-term plan for implementation of the Additional Support for Learning Act, which will include actions to support schools in identifying and supporting young carers. And the proposals within the Children and Young People Bill to have a named person for every child will take into account caring responsibilities.
Thank you. Claudia Beamish.
I thank the Minister for her answer and note the initiatives that she's highlighted. However, I did join hundreds of young carers at the Young Carers Festival earlier this summer, and one of the key issues they raised with me and other MSPs who were present from across the parties was the patchy nature of support for them in schools at present. So this is an urgent matter and clearly an ongoing issue for them. And I wonder if the Minister could pledge to look at it again in the near future to see what she can do to ensure that all young carers receive the same level of support regardless of their local authority.
Minister.
Thank you, and I recognise and respect the deep interest that Claudia does have, and no doubt her experience through her professional life as well. And I did also attend the Young Carers Festival, which the Scottish Government is committed to helping with for another 2 years. I do take on board the points that Claudia Beamish raises and the other issues that young carers raise, and will continue to always engage with young carers to ensure that we do provide the services and support that they need, and will always be willing to have a door open to ensure that those messages are loudly heard by government. But there are initiatives in place to ensure that schools do support young carers, and of course toolkits there to ensure that young carers can come forward and disclose the sensitivities of their own personal backgrounds.
Thank you. Question 17, Sarah Barrett.
To ask the Scottish Government what proportion and number of students studying for a diploma in legal practice in 2012-13 will receive the maximum postgraduate tuition fee loan.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, this information is not available at the present time, as the closing date for applications is 31st March 2013. What I can say, however, is that because the loan is not means tested, all students can apply for the maximum loan, though some may choose not to do so.
Sarah Barrett.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer and ask if he would outline what the rationale was for the decision to change PSAS funding for DPLP students from grant funding to a loan system, and what impact this has had on the cost of the scheme?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, let me just use, Presiding Officer, one set of figures that show the rationale. In 2011-12, 300 funded DPL places were available at Scottish institutions on a discretionary basis. The move to tuition fee loans allows us to expand support. That means that 700 students will actually be available, will be funded this year. And this addresses previous concerns about the selection process at institutions for access to places with funding support. This will allow more young people to move forward in their careers and to get support in postgraduate education, something, as I've said earlier, this government is very keen to encourage. There is, of course, the availability of professional and career development loans for all these students, and this is a deferred payment bank loan to help pay for vocational training leading to employment in the UK or EU. So there is support available for this. But if we are going to continue to support young people moving from undergraduate to postgraduate work, we need to support the tuition fee element. We're able to do so for more students, and I think that should be welcomed across the chamber.
Thank you. Question 18, Aileen MacLeod.
Thanks very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether the Commission on the Delivery of Rural Education has considered the issues regarding school transport and the current statutory limits for this.
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, Presiding Officer, the Commission has taken evidence on a wide range of issues affecting rural education, including school transport. Local authorities have a duty under the Education Scotland Act 1980 to make such arrangements as they consider necessary for the transport between home and school of pupils residing and attending schools in their area. Rural authorities provide free transport for pupils living more than the statutory walking distance from the school, and that's 2 miles for a child under 8 years, 3 miles for children aged 8 or more.
Aileen MacLeod, briefly, please.
Secretary for his reply. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that the more rural the authorities, such as Dumfries and Galloway, for example, the more significant these issues are. And many parents there have asked me whether there cannot be a better solution than the uncertainty of grace and favour places. So will the Cabinet Secretary undertake to work with rural authorities to help them find the best solutions to this problem?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, the Government is always happy to work with local authorities, but I should stress, as the member knows, the responsibility for the provision of school transport rests with local authorities. They are best placed to know in their own area what should be supported and what shouldn't, and that includes working within the Safe Route to Schools project, which does mean that we ensure that every child is safe on their way to and from education.
Thank you. And that concludes